Hello and welcome to the Insider at Home, the show that brings you the best in show jumping. My guest for today is a 10-time American Rider of the Year. She has won nearly 250 Grand Prix. Her achievements and her experience in our sport are unparalleled. She takes her work ethic and her sport very serious, but she doesn't take herself always that serious. Though she's always in for a joke, you don't mess around with her when she's around the poker table. Here she is, the one and only Margie Engle. Great to have you with us.
Great to be here, Frederick.
How are you doing, Margie?
Okay, so far.
Tell me, where do we find you? Where are we holding this Insider at Home? Where are you?
I'm still in Wellington, Florida. We just started competing in some schooling shows last week, and they did a great job. I was over at Global. It's a different world out there. We're all wearing masks and don't know who anybody is, and gloves, but it's interesting, and everyone's working hard at it. It's very warm down here. South Florida, the humidity it's like you're walking in a sauna, but we're at least out there and we're able to do what we love doing.
Well, that's the most important. I hear you say it's hard work. I've been through your biographies. It was hard work for you to start your horse riding career, not only competing, just the horse riding. You had to put in a lot of effort to get your first ride, actually. How did your career start, or how did your riding start?
Actually, a friend of mine from grade school, she was my best friend in first grade, second grade, when I was like 6, 7 years old. She had a horse out at the stable. It was called Gladewin's Farm, and it was a riding school, and they had a dog and a cat kennel, and I was like 8 or 9 years old, and I was begging my parents to be able to ride, and my family is non-horsey. They didn't understand the riding, and they thought I was too small and I was going to get hurt. And I've always been a little bit of a daredevil, that I like doing things with animals, and I liked sports, and it just seemed like a great combination. So the Kramers, I begged them all the time for if I could earn something around the barn. I wanted to work with the horses and groom, but they said I was too small. So I worked in they had a dog and a cat kennel. So I started off working in a dog and cat kennel in exchange for riding lessons, and you had pleasure rides with the horses and everything. And I didn't really think of it as work. I loved working I loved animals. So in the cat kennels, that was easy because cats go in a little box. They have a litter box, so that was quite easy. The dog kennels were not quite as nice. The dog kennels, they're very messy, and that was difficult to clean out. My parents paid for one lesson a week, and then if I wanted to ride more, because it's expensive sport, and I had a choice of either continuing my guitar playing or lessons or doing the riding, and I did the riding. And the Kramers let me work in exchange for rides, and I loved it. And then I would beg to be able to groom the horses, and when I got to about 10, then they let me start working around the barn. And my parents were laughing at the time that they said, you were all excited. You came home and said, oh, they let me clean the horses' stalls out. I was so excited that I got to clean the horses' stalls instead of the dog and cat kennels. But they're much cleaner and don't smell as bad as the dogs.
I imagine. Oh, Margie, when you started riding, did you straight away have talent?
I don't know. It's hard to say about yourself, but I was gutsy, and I loved a challenge. The ponies I liked were the more difficult ones, the ones that were Mrs. Kramer would want me to ride the nicer ones, but I didn't want to ride the ones that everybody liked. I wanted the difficult ones that were a challenge. And then when they saw that I was willing to work through it, I just felt like I accomplished more when they would tell me that you're not going to get this pony around. She's going to keep dumping you. And I fell off almost every lesson because she knew how to dump it. She knew how to drop her shoulder. And ponies know a lot more tricks than the horses. The horses I started on, they were quite easy. But then when they saw I was willing to work through that, and they started giving me ponies and horses to break. They raised ponies, and they had a breeding stable also, and all the Gladewin's ponies, and they had other people send them horses and ponies. And when I was 11 or 12, they kind of hired me I didn't get paid in exchange for riding. They bought me my first saddle and my first riding boots, and the Kramers were like second parents to me. Yeah. So I was so excited to have a job working with breaking the ponies, and I ended up getting to show a lot of their ponies, and I did a lot of catch riding from 12 years old on for different people. And I rode for Bibby Farmer, and the Kramers would pay for clinics with different top professionals when I was a kid on their ponies. So I got a lot of nice training through them, and Karen Harnden helped me. But they were very supportive, and they saw how much I wanted to do it, and they always wanted their own children to really have the passion. And they all liked riding, but they didn't want to do it as badly as I did. I was like kind of obsessed, but I loved it.
Where do you find the drive and the motivation every day? Every day.
I don't really think of it as having to have a lot of drive. I love doing it. It's something I look forward to. Even now, it's been kind of nice with the break. My husband and I have been able to go out, and he hasn't ridden for over 20 something years. And we go out to the stable, and he's been trail riding with me. And Deacus is a saint, so he walks around on him. He does a little bit of trotting. I guess it was something that was so difficult when I was young to be able to do, and I had to work so hard to do it, that now it's just a pleasure to have some nicer horses. When I started, I got every horse that nobody else wanted to ride. They'd say, "Oh, well, ask Margie to ride. She'll ride anything." And Mrs. Kramer used to tease me. She said, "If I brought a donkey out here, you'd probably get on it."
Did that follow you? Because you've got many riders that become successful or often ride a type of horse, another type follows them throughout their entire career. Was it the same for you?
No, I had all different types. I actually was probably best on the little bit hotter. I rode a lot of hunters. I rode a lot of hunters and did the equitation also. And I always wanted to do the jumpers, but I did a lot of hunters and mainly a lot of thoroughbreds when I started. And as a type, I like the ones that were a little more sensitive, a little more blood. But, you can't be picky when I never owned any part of my own horse till I was well into my middle 20s. So I was happy with anything I got to ride. So I didn't really have a type. I had to learn to adapt to what the horses were. So I rode everything from stubborn, ornery ponies to hot race horses off the racetrack I got a lot of experience riding different horses and just kind of gained experience that way. And they taught me a lot.
These days, we know you with your fantastic Royce, and of course with Deacus, who's now a loyal partner to your husband Steve. We hope to see Deacus back out on the shows, of course. Where do they fit in the spectrum of horses? Are they similar? Are they different? Because they seem huge.
Well, it's funny. Royce looks huge, but he's just a big boned horse. I kind of compare him to a football player. He's like a strong football player, and Deacus is more like a basketball player. He's all legs and just really tall and lanky. Deacus is probably 2 hands taller than Royce is, but he's 18'1". Royce is probably only measures at the withers, probably about 16'1". So he looks a lot bigger than he is because he's so big boned. Yeah. He's not the type of horse I would normally pick out as something that neither one would be. I mean, Hidden Creek's Laurel or a horse named Salute I used to ride, that's really a type that's more around 16'2" and short coupled. That would probably be a type that I would pick out. But you can't nowadays, kind of beggars can't be choosy. And you got to, I like both of them had a lot of talent and they both wanted to leave the jumps up and were careful and you learn to adapt to their style a little bit.
Every article that I could find about you, whether it's a month old or it's 15 years old, in every article, you seem to be emphasizing the fact that you're still learning every day. What did you learn in the past few months? Let's say after when the Corona break started, what did the horses teach you over the last few weeks?
Each horse you learn something different from because they all have different personalities. That's why this is a type of sport that you never get tired of. You're always learning something new, how to deal with. I've got 3 or 4 new 8-year-olds and they're teaching me all the time what works with them, and you try and build a bond and a relationship. It's nice to go back to the basics and be able to work with these horses instead of having to run off to a horse show and just get ready for that. We're able to work with them at home and build a good foundation, which is what that's how I started with the horses. I've been able to, and spend a lot of time. I have some babies at the barn, and it's been really a lot of fun spending time with the weanlings and the yearlings. I mean, they're like sponges. They just want to soak everything up, and they're just fun to be around. They're just, some of them, I have a couple of Royce's babies, and they've got his personality, a little bit of a comedian, and they love the tension. They'll come running over. They listen better than most dogs. I call them and they come running up and want to be scratched on their withers, or it's just fun being around them. But I think it's just learning to be patient and taking your time, and sometimes more time at the beginning is shorter time later when you're working with them and you build a good foundation.
Margie, you've competed in many championships, many Nations Cups. You've won many Nations Cups with the American equestrian team, and now in recent years you've been competing on the Global Champions League. A completely new concept, innovative, different rules, different strategies. How do you like the change?
I love it. I mean, it's great to be able to go to all these new venues and see all the different places. And now people that we competed against in Nations Cups, we get to ride with. And it's great seeing how all the top riders, how they work, and you get to go to nice 5-star shows with the top riders. And you never stop learning. As a little kid, I learned a lot by watching at the rail and soaked up as much as I could. And no matter what age you are, you're still always learning. And it's fun watching all the top riders and even the younger ones. I mean, you can pick something up from anyone and everyone. I mean, it's a very interesting sport in that way that I don't think we ever stop learning.
I think you'll comment to our in the saddle aspect about your big win at the first stage, at least, or the first round of the Global Champions League in Valkenswaard, a victory alongside Eric Lamaze, an Olympic champion, winner of many Grand Prix, just like you. An accomplished show jumper. How was it to team up with him?
My first Nations Cups were always in North America to start. So I've been competing against him for a long time, and also in the Winter Equestrian Festival in Toronto and all those shows. And it's kind of nice to be able to team up and do a championship together with him. He's always been very competitive and he's always fast, and it was a new experience and it was a lot of fun.
Yeah. You say you learned a lot by watching from the rail. Who were your inspirations?
Oh gosh, I couldn't name just one, but as a kid, I think one of the most interesting riders that I watched, it's more because I was in America, so it was Rodney Jenkins was amazing to watch because he was maybe not the stylist that some of the others are, but he never interfered with the horses. He always was a real horseman, and the horses all seemed to love him, and he was totally out of their way when they jumped. And I think horses like that, to have their own freedom over the fence. I would watch him. He would jog up with idle dice to this big, tall vertical, nothing underneath. That would be probably 5.5, 6 feet, and just jog up at a little sit trot, and the horse would curl around it. And he was just amazing. You get on one horse after the next. I mean, then you had your classic stylists like Michael Matz and Joe Fargis, Conrad, Katie Pradon. I mean, those are all people I watch. Ian Miller. I mean, Ian's been amazing for decades and decades, and he stays as fit and rides as well as he ever has. I watched him year after year, and he was amazing what he did with the horses, just watching him in the schooling area with the different gymnastic type exercises, but he would do like tight combinations where he had a lot of big horses because he's a big man. And I remember with Big Ben watching him school over these tight vertical combinations and getting the horse to react quickly and think for themselves a little bit. Because I think in the long run, if you get them thinking for themselves, they're going to help you out more when you need them to.
Are you the kind of horse trainer, if I may put it like that, that doesn't want to program a horse? And is that maybe even more the American style compared to the European style?
I think I'm somewhere in between the American style and the European style. I think because of my size, I have to do different things. I do sit down more for leverage than I'm not as much in the 2-point as a lot of riders in the US because I need to get more leverage because of my height. So I have to sit down, and it helps with that. And I can get the horses to engage more behind that way. And I do a lot of dressage background, so that gets me more sitting in the saddle and trying to get the horses to engage. I don't know that I put every horse in the same program. I try and do what's best, what they seem to like the best. When you ride a thoroughbred hot horse, you have to ride them differently than you do a big cold warm blood. So you have to adapt to their style sometimes also. I mean, when I started, like I said, I was doing 60, 70 rounds between hunters and jumpers as a kid down in Tropical Park and the fairgrounds. And I would just get on one to the next. And a lot of them were catch rides. So I didn't get to have them adapt to me. I had to adapt to them very quickly. They were horses that I rode for different trainers. So I had like 5-10 minutes to adapt to how they went best and what they liked best.
You speak there about heroes, or at least people that you looked up to or that maybe have influenced you. Do you think that Margie Engle influences people?
I don't know. It's a funny question. I mean, I know as a kid, like I looked up to Bill Steinkraus. And I think besides just being a top rider, when I watched all his old videos and read the books and everything, I think one of the nicest things about him is, besides being a top rider, is he was a very classy man, and he was always kind to everyone. He was always polite. He had integrity. Those are things I think growing up in a non-horsey family, I really admire in someone, is how they treat other people. And a lot of people can ride well, but it's how you treat the horses and how you treat other people. I think it's very important also. So I hope it's not just by the riding, it's how you act towards other people and how you are as a person that people try and emulate. And I think that's more something I looked up to also when I was a kid, that some of these top riders, no matter how good they rode, and it's just like with Rod, they still had time to say hello to you. They weren't arrogant. They were very, very humble, and they had time to give you advice if you wanted. You know, they treated everyone the same. And that's what I really liked about them. I admired how they were as people, not just as riders.
I do. I think it's very fair to say that many, at least of your colleagues, will, if they don't admire you for the, what was it, nearly 250 Grand Prix wins, at least they will admire you for your personality, because everything you just described about, for example, Steinkraus, I think it just perfectly fits into your profile just as well. Yeah.
Well, that's very kind of you. But I do try and do have a light manner, and it is, you know, laughing is the best medicine. The sport has a lot of ups and downs, so you got to kind of laugh at yourself. I'm the first one that's ready to laugh at yourself if something goes wrong, which it does a lot. And you got to learn to roll with the punches. And sometimes laughter, like they say, is the best medicine. And I like to joke around a little bit. It breaks the tension. And just it's much easier to be happy than the other way around.
If you have a long-lasting career like you have yourself, you go through all the ups and downs. Is the idea of not taking yourself all too serious, is that the best way to keep it rolling as long as you've kept it rolling so far?
I think so, but that's still something I'm working on. I mean, you do as much as you try and work on it, and no matter what age, you still tend to think about all the negative things that have happened to you, and when you make mistakes in the ring. And it's something that it's better to try and get something positive out of it and try and learn from your mistakes and not dwell on them. And that's still something I have to work on a little bit at night. You know, when you kind of go over it, oh, I should have done this or I should have done that. And you beat yourself up quite a bit, but you have to learn to kind of just learn and go forward.
Yeah. Is that, if you had advice, is that advice to give to young people who come into the sport and who are working hard and finding that there are serious hurdles in front of the goals that they want to achieve?
That's one of the things. I mean, there's going to be hurdles in everything you do, but you got to just work through them and try and learn from them and be positive and just be very determined, never give up. I mean, it was funny that my first instructor, that was one thing she said. She said, take the word can't out of your vocabulary. And I always remember that. And she said, you just have to learn a way around it. Like you said, they're hurdles. So how am I going to get around this? But you have to work away. I had a student, and I did the same thing when I taught a lot of students. You know, when I teach them, I'll work with you, but don't use the word can't. You know, you can learn to work around that. And I don't, even if they have disabilities and things, and they would work around them. But if you want to do it, whatever you want to do, and if you have a passion for it, you try and do it as best you can.
That sounds like very good advice that everybody can use, whether you're a show jumper or not, regardless of what you do in life. But we are talking about show jumping, and you brought us some tips and tricks. The first exercise that you gave us, we've got 2 ground rails, 60 feet in between. I had to look it up on the online calculator. That is 18.5 meters between each other. Very basic. What do we do with it?
It's a very simple exercise, and I just put the 2 rails out. You can make them a little longer if you want, and in a smaller ring, it works well at that distance. And I just try and get my riders to work with, and I do the same thing to work on the horse's adjustability. Usually it's 5 comfortable strides if you're not going very strong, and just working on straightness. It's just very simple and basic. Working on going straight, and before the turn, not letting your horses cut in or not letting them bulge out, keeping nice tracks, and alternating turns on the landing side. And you practice it at 5 strides, then add a stride in 6. And if you're more advanced, you can add to 7 strides, and then leave out and do 4 strides down it, and always keeping that connection with the leg and hand. So you kind of feel the horse underneath you. You have to mold yourself. I tell a lot of the riders, mold yourself around the horses so you feel what's going on underneath, not always looking down at what they're doing. But just alternating anywhere between 4 and 7 strides, and alternating it and trying to make each stride even. I mean, that's the main thing, and just getting yourself adjustable and the horse. And it helps when you do courses, because the courses now are very technical. You have a lot of lines that are forward, and then you have to get the horses to come back right away. And it's just teaching yourself to be adjustable and your horse to be responsive.
Okay. That's let's call it the warm-up exercise. Then as a second one, we've got, I think it's trot pulls. What is this?
I use raised cavalettis, and they're about 4 feet apart, which I'm not sure what that is in meters, but probably
120 something, 1 meter 20.
Okay. I'll believe you. So, and I have them on opposite sides, and usually I have like little boxes that I have at home, but you can put them anywhere from 6 inches to I think it goes up to 14 or 16 inches by rolling them over, and alternating sides kind of on the ground on one side and up to 12 or 16 inches on the side. And and you have the horses trot through those. And it's kind of an exercise. I like to compare it to the football players when they run through the tires. And it's kind of agility and their coordination, and it works on the horse's coordination. And you can really feel the suspension in the horses, and if you have your horse too heavy on its front end, then it's not going to be able to trot through there correctly. Or if you don't have enough trot from behind, enough impulsion, then they get very plain and they kind of stumble through. If you have the impulsion behind, and then you can feel the horses elevate, and that's what you want, is to feel their hind end active underneath you. And it's a really good tool for gauging that. So I like that exercise too. And these are exercises that it's not a lot of wear and tear on the horses. They're very easy exercises, and there's not a lot of pounding on them. And they're things that you can feel what's going on underneath, and making sure that you have your horse where you want it, and working on the connection that you have with the horse.
Talking about pounding, your horses last long. Indigo, 20 years young. Royce, 16, still going strong. Dikas is at the start of his big career, but your horses last long. Do you attribute that to your training program, or what's the story behind it?
A little bit of everything. I do a lot of preventative maintenance, and I'm lucky enough to have my husband that helps kind of see things before they happen. And he cautions me if there's any little thing coming up, and we try and stop it ahead of time. You can't eliminate everything. There's going to be injuries and things, but I've been very lucky with that, and trying to have the best group of people around you that you can, and the best team of vets and blacksmiths. And it's really a team effort with everyone working, and the grooms, knowing if something's not just right, and then you just back off. And I feel like you're always safer to back off and skip a show than to try and go when they're not right.
Yeah.
And then have an injury that you regretted going to the show and getting one more class in. Perrin went. He was a big horse, and he was club-footed, and he, when we first vetted him, they didn't think he was going to last for very long because of his build and everything. And he went. I think he won his last Grand Prix. He was 19 or 20,
Yeah.
and so it's just, I think a lot of it's just maintenance and not overdoing. And I've been very fortunate to have, in the earlier part of the career, I had a lot of different Grand Prix horses, so I could alternate them a lot.
If it happens with one horse, it could be luck. If it happens with numerous horses, it can't just be luck. It also has to be the system and or the program or the management. And in that management, you've got a third exercise for us. Before we recorded it, you said, yeah, this is also one of those exercises to not give the horses. I won't explain it. I'll let you explain it. What have we got here?
Okay.
Bounces.
I love bounces. It gets the horses, works on their core, and it gets them thinking about jumping off their hind end on their own. If they get in, I let them figure it out on their own pretty much. You can canter through, and probably about 1.20 meters in between. I think I got that right. I'm not sure, but 4 feet. And you can put anywhere from 2 to 6 bounces up in a row, whatever you like. And it teaches the horses to rock back on their own. You don't have to jump them very big. I only jump them normally. It's normally less than 1 meter. Like, I don't know what 2 foot is, but probably like 2 foot. You can do them with X's. I do them with straight poles a lot of times. And it just makes the horse think about rocking back and jumping off his haunches. And it's a good exercise for them building their core without having the pounding of landing off of large jumps. And it helps keep their muscles strong for jumping without doing a lot of big jumps at home. I try and keep the jumps to a minimum at home. I was always taught horses only have so many jumps in them. So I try and save as much as I can for the ring. And that way it's less pounding on them. And the exercises with the canter rails for the students that need to practice using their eye and seeing a distance, that's a good exercise for that. So it's that same instance where less is more. You know, the less pounding you can do with keeping them fit enough so they don't get injured, I think that helps them a lot. And it's an exercise where they can learn on their own too, and not always depend on the rider to help balance them all the times. Yeah. So they can balance themselves off of the bounce. And I just really like that exercise. I've done it for quite a few years.
All right. Thank you very much for all three. I think all of our fans, regardless of their level, they can find something in one of these 3 exercises. And I think everybody who has watched this episode of The Insider at Home can do something with the idea. Take the word can't out of your sentences and your vocabulary, and it'll take you quite a long way.
One thing I was with the bounces, when I did do that exercise, one of the things I've been fortunate, I went to a lot of the vet conventions with my husband, and there are other vets that have conditioning of the sport horses. And with the bounces, that's why I've always kept that in the back of my head. She even told different dressage horses and dressage riders that was a good exercise for building their core and strength so they don't get injured. So it was something that, you read different books like Conditioning of the Sport Horse and things like that. So it, like you said, for all horses, it's not always just for jumpers. It does help strengthen their muscles.
There's a second time, I think, in this interview that you say, I read it in a book, though I believe that you've got a lot of natural talent, and everybody will agree. Did you pick up a lot from reading books?
I did. Anywhere I could learn, I tried to learn. I read many times Hunt Seat Equitation that George had written, and books of Bill Steinkraus. And I'm fortunate enough to, like I said, be able to go to the vet conventions with my husband. And I'm not into the gory stuff with all the surgeries and things like that. But I did I was interested in like that conditioning of a sport horse. I went to a lot of the lectures with that was interesting. And I bought some of the books that the people that I like to listen to. So it's helped me with the maintaining the horses and with some of the things that go on down back at the barn. And just, the more you can know about the horses, I think the better all around.
I couldn't agree more. Margie, thank you very much for sitting down with us. I know it's midday in Florida. I know your day isn't over yet, so we'll let you go back to the barn and back to work. But I want to thank you for taking the time and giving us some good insights and some very good advice based on experience. So thank you very much.
No problem. Enjoy being here. And It's nice to get out of the heat anyway. It's the middle of the day, and we're not traveling much anyway. I was teasing someone the other day. Said I told my suitcases we're not going anywhere for a while, and now I'm dealing with all this emotional baggage. So we're not doing that much, so we can have plenty of time for this.
I can't wait until the tour starts again and we finally have you back at the shows again. So thank you for sitting down with us. And to you at home, to our viewers, our fans of The Insider at Home, or inside all the 20 questions. Once again, as always, thank you very much for watching. Stay safe, bye-bye, and see you next time.